When Charles de Gaulle boarded the small plane that took him from war-torn France to London on 17 June 1940, even he could not have foreseen the way in which he was launching himself onto the world stage. He was a little-known figure, a recently promoted two-star general acting in opposition to his country's legal government in the midst of catastrophic defeat. But that flight marked the start of a trajectory which would see him save his country twice and found a republic that endures to this day, marking him out as a truly unique figure fulfilling an intense sense of manifest destiny. He outlasted his great wartime contemporaries. Roosevelt and Stalin were both dead, and Churchill in retirement when he returned to power in 1958 at the age of 68 to rule France for another 10 years. None had quite the same self-awareness and sense of mission, epitomized in the way he spoke of himself in the third person. When de Gaulle the man looks at de Gaulle the historic figure, he understands that the historic de Gaulle has to act as is expected of him, he said. His fate was to be France's Republican monarch, answering to a calling far higher than everyday politics and acting on a plane of his own. When asked if he agreed to a proposal, he replied, "I do not agree. I decide yes or no." His life was more dangerous than that of most other leaders. He fought in 2 major wars and was the target of up to 24 assassination attempts as president. But he declined to take precautions. In part, at least, his fearlessness stemmed from his sense of the very special role he had to play. Explaining his refusal to take cover when German shells were falling around him in 1944, he told an official, "I have a providential mission to fulfill. I think nothing will happen to me. If it does, I will have been mistaken." A study of the 10 words used most frequently in his speeches and broadcasts between 1958 and 1965 showed France, or the country, accounting for 55%. The basic question, he wrote in a letter in 1963, was, yes or no, should France be France? His vision was pitched so high that the French were bound to disappoint him all too frequently. For de Gaulle, life was a constant struggle, and he thought his compatriots all too prone to opt for an easy existence or compromise, leading him to brand them as veaux, literally calves but best rendered into English as sheep. His identification with France was so intense that, in his mind, the historic de Gaulle and the country he saw himself carrying on my shoulders became one. As president, he spoke of a murmur rising around him to urge the country on, for all the world like the supernatural voices that drove Joan of Arc. When he plunged into crowds, it was more than political populism. He was exercising his human link with the nation, emerging, as the journalist Pierre Viançon-Pontet put it, with his eyes shining with pleasure, happy to be alive, even if the police had arrested would-be assassins on his path. For Richard Nixon, an acute admirer, he was the builder of a cathedral, France, and saw his nation as a sort of middle kingdom for which the rest of the world had meaning only if it affected France. This identification went hand in hand with his deep belief that the nation-state, not ideology or alliances, was the bedrock on which everything rested.